Hey nappy friend, welcome back to our nappy little club. You're home now, and we saved your spot. Tonight we are traveling back to the 17th century, to the heart of the Spanish Empire's great silver machine, the city of Potosi, in what is now Bolivia. We're going to step into the worn leather sandals of a silver miner. Imagine the thin, high-altitude air, sharp and cold, a stark contrast to the warm, heavy comfort of your blanket. Picture a mountain not of serene stone and snow, but one honeycombed with tunnels, breathing out dust and despair, a place that single-handedly funded the extravagance of European kings. You probably wouldn't survive a single day there, let's be honest, most of them didn't either. But here, in our little nook, you are perfectly safe, perfectly relaxed, and free to witness it all from a comfortable distance. So, before your eyelids get too heavy, if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, tap that like button and subscribe to keep our sleepy adventures coming. After all, nobody wants to miss out on history, right? As you settle in, feel free to drop a comment and let us all know what city you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always a quiet joy to see how far our little club stretches. So dim your lights, tune into the soft, comforting fan hum, and ease gently into tonight's journey, because you're now officially in Nappy community. You're not just listening. You're an essential part of our Nappy family, where every night is soothing, special, and yours. You're safe, valued, and always welcome. The first thing you feel is the cold. It's a profound, biting cold that seeps through the thin weave of your wool poncho and settles deep into your bones. It's the pre-dawn chill of the Altiplano, over 4,000 meters above the sea, where the air is so thin it feels like you're breathing half-breaths. You are Koya. That is the name your mother gave you, a name that echoes the queens of your ancestors, the Inca. Here, it is just a sound, a whisper against the vast, silent authority of the mountain that looms over you. You stand in a silent crowd of men, hundreds of you, your faces etched with the same weary resignation in the pale, ethereal light of the moon. This daily gathering is a somber ritual. Historians still debate whether these morning congregations were merely a practical assembly point or a kind of silent collective funeral procession for the day ahead. Looking at the hollowed eyes and gaunt cheeks around you, it feels much more like the latter. In your cheek, a small wad of coca leaves rests, a familiar companion. You chew on them slowly, methodically. The gentle bitterness and the slow releasing stimulant are not for pleasure, but for survival. They dull the gnawing hunger in your belly, sharpen your senses against the impending darkness, and provide a sliver of endurance for the ordeal to come. You look up at the cause of it all, the Cerro Rico, the rich hill. It doesn't look like a mountain. It is a monstrous reddish-brown cone, scarred and pockmarked with the black mouths of more than 500 mines. It looks less like a work of nature and more like a colossal, diseased carcass. For generations, it has been known by another name among your people, the mountain that eats men. A chillingly accurate description, a Spanish overseer, a man whose face you know, but whose name you don't care to remember, barks an order in a language that still feels foreign on your tongue, even after all this time. The silent mass of men stirs, a collective sigh of cold breath misting in the air. The procession begins, a slow, shuffling march up the well-worn path towards the mine, assigned to you for the week. You clutch the tools of your trade, a heavy iron bar and a leather sack called a capacho that will soon be filled with 50 pounds of silver ore. You reach the entrance, the Boca del Infierno, the mouth of hell. It is aptly named. It's a dark, jagged hole in the side of the mountain, framed by rickety wooden beams. A foul breath seems to emanate from it, a mixture of damp earth, metallic dust, and something else, something acrid and vaguely chemical. The overseer stands by the entrance, his face illuminated by a single lantern, counting the men as they disappear one by one into the earth. He gives a lazy, dismissive wave as you pass, his version of wishing you well, which you know really means don't cause any delays. Your life is less valuable than the silver you dig. Now the descent begins. There is no gentle slope, no minecart to carry you into the depths. There are only the ladders. This is one of the most forgotten and terrifying details of this life. The Spanish call them escaleras de gallina, or chicken ladders. They are nothing more than thick logs, sometimes two tied together with crude notches carved into them for handholds and footholds. They are slicked with a constant, greasy film of mud and condensation. You sling your leather sack over your shoulder, hold your tallow candle, your only source of light, precariously in one hand, and begin to climb down into the absolute blackness. The descent is a vertical journey into another world. Your universe shrinks to the flickering halo of your candle flame, the feel of the rough, damp wood under your fingers, and the sound of your own breathing echoing strangely in the narrow shaft. Above you, you hear the shuffling and coughing of the man descending behind you. Below, only an endless, silent darkness that promises a fall of hundreds of feet for a single misstep. You focus on the rhythm, hand, foot, hand, foot. Your muscles, already aching from yesterday's labor, burn with the strain of the controlled descent. You can feel the air growing warmer, thicker, and heavier with every meter you go down. The fresh, cold air of the Andes is now a distant memory, replaced by a stale, recycled heat that smells of human sweat and stone dust. It can take over an hour to reach the work face, an hour of pure, terrifying concentration where a moment's lapse means oblivion. Tonight you make it. You step off the final rung of the ladder onto a solid, uneven rock floor. The darkness is total, the silence of the deep earth broken only by the distant rhythmic tink, tink, tink of another team of miners, already at work, chipping away at the veins of a mountain that has already consumed so many. The tunnel opens into a slightly wider cavern, a hellish workshop carved from the living rock. The air here is even hotter, thick with the humidity that clings to your skin and makes every breath feel like a mouthful of warm, wet wool. This is where a different kind of alchemy happens, far grimmer than turning lead to gold. This is where you turn stone into silver and men into ghosts. In the center of the cavern floor, several shallow circular pits have been dug, each one a miniature toxic swamp. They call this the patio process, which you find deeply ironic. A patio is a place for sitting in the sun, for laughter, for a moment of peace. Here, under hundreds of feet of rock, the name is a cruel joke. This is where you will perform the dance of amalgamation. Your task for the first part of the shift is the ripasso, an older, more experienced miner, whose name is Mateo, gestures for you to follow his lead. He rolls the thin fabric of his trousers up to his knees, revealing pale legs scarred with nicks and strange rashes. You do the same. The ground is covered in a coarse gray sludge, crushed silver ore, pulverized to the consistency of fine gravel and mixed with water and salt. But the key ingredient is yet to come. Another worker arrives, carefully carrying a heavy leather-lined pouch. He opens it and pours a shimmering, silvery liquid into the slurry. Azog, mercury. It scatters into 1,000 tiny, perfect spheres before disappearing into the mud. You know it comes from the mines of Huancavelica, another death sentence. Hundreds of miles away, a place whispered about with even more fear than Potosi. Entra, Mateo grunts, and steps into the pit. You hesitate for a fraction of a second, then follow. The sludge is shockingly cold at first, a thick, gritty ooze that squelches up between your toes. And then the dance begins. For hours you will walk in slow, tight circles, treading the mixture with your bare feet. The relentless stomping is the only way to ensure every particle of silver ore comes into contact with the mercury. It's a job for the youngest and newest workers, the ones whose bodies have not yet begun to completely betray them. The work is grueling, a monotonous, muscle-shredding marathon. Your back aches and your legs burn, but you cannot stop. The overseer's schedule is unforgiving. You fall into a rhythm, the slow, circular shuffle of a dozen other men in this and other nearby pits. The only sounds are the wet, sucking noise of the mud and the occasional cough that rattles through the cavern. There is no smell, and that, you've learned, is the most terrifying part. The Azog is a silent ghost. It enters your body not with a bang, but a whisper, seeping through the soles of your feet, inhaled as invisible vapor in the hot, stagnant air. You've seen what it does. You look at Mateo. His hands, when he rests them on his hips for a moment, have a slight constant tremor. He tells you it's just the chill of the mine, but you see it in all the older repasseries, the men who work the patios. A deadly dance that stays with them long after the work is done. It's a grimly valued skill, this self-destruction. The bosses know Mateo is one of the best, even as the poison that makes him skilled is visibly consuming him. An asoguero, the mercury master, arrives for his inspection. He is a Spaniard, but one who has spent too long in the depths. His skin is a pasty yellow, and his eyes seem unfocused. His own hands tremble so violently he can barely hold the small copper bowl he uses. This is the man who decides when the amalgam is ready. He doesn't use any fancy instruments. He wades into the pit, scoops up a handful of the gray muck, and rubs it between his palms. He closes his eyes, his entire being focused on the texture, the consistency, the way it feels. This is the dark, artisanal knowledge of the mines, to know by touch when the mercury has lovingly embraced every last speck of silver. Some of the old-timers, they say, would even put a dab on their tongue to check for the right metallic taste, a practice that guaranteed a swift journey to the grave. He grunts in satisfaction at your pit, nods, and moves on, leaving you to wonder if he is tasting your future. You try not to think about it. You try to think of the sun, of the taste of corn stew, of your wife's face. But the mine always pulls. Your thoughts back to the dangers at hand. A distant rumble echoes through the rock, and a few pebbles skitter down the cavern wall. Your heart seizes for a moment. Historians of a future you will never see will argue about what killed the most men in Poorest. Was it the sudden, brutal violence of a tunnel collapse? Was it the mal de la mina, the lung sickness from breathing in rock dust day after day that left men gasping for air? Or was it this slow, intimate poison you are currently treading into your own blood? You look at the trembling hands of Mateo, you hear the rumble in the rock, and you feel the familiar tightness in your own chest. The mountain has many ways to eat a man. You just don't know which one it has chosen for you. At last, the shift in the patio ends. The azoguero has approved the batch. Now the toxic mud will be collected and taken to the furnaces, where it will be heated to burn away the mercury as vapor, poisoning the air of the entire city, leaving behind a lump of pure porous silver. You are caked to your knees in the gray, gritty sludge. You feel a strange numbness in your toes, a tingling you dismiss as cold, but which your soul knows is the ghost of the Azog taking root. The long, exhausting climb back to the surface awaits, back up the chicken ladders, into the world of the living. You feel heavier than you did this morning, and not just from fatigue. A little more of you has been left behind in the dark, a small offering to the unquenchable thirst of the mountain. The climb out is the exact reverse of the descent, yet it feels twice as long. Every muscle screams in protest as you pull your exhausted body up the notched, slippery rungs of the chicken ladder. Your only light is the faint, distant promise of the evening sky, a pale gray square far, far above. It is during this slow, torturous ascent, in the suspended blackness between the hell below and the harsh world above, that your mind begins to wander. It drifts away from the burning in your legs and the ache in your back and travels miles and months away back to the place you once called home. Before Potosi, your world was one of sun-baked earth and the sharp, clean scent of quinoa growing. In the terraced fields, you were a farmer. Your life was dictated by the seasons, by the wisdom passed down through generations. You lived in an elu, a community bound by blood and land. Your grandfather, a man whose face was a roadmap of wrinkles and stories, used to speak of the old Meha, the one that existed before the Spanish. He said it was a duty, a form of service to the Inca emperor. Men would be called to build roads, terraces, or storehouses for the good of the empire. It was hard work, he'd admit, but it was a shared sacrifice. They were fed, cared for, and when they returned as men who had served their people. The Spanish, you think with a bitter irony, kept the word but hollowed out its meaning entirely. Grandfather's version of public service definitely sounded like it came with a better benefits package. Your current servitude is a product of a different system, a perversion of the old way. It was established by a man you've never met, a viceroy named Toledo, whose laws are as inescapable as the mountains themselves. His decree states that 1/7 of the men from your region and from hundreds of other villages must travel to Potosi for 1 year to work in the mines. It is presented not as slavery, but as a tax, a labor tax. It's a strange kind of tax, you muse, one that is paid not with a portion of your harvest, but with the very breath from your lungs and the strength of your back. You remember the day, the chain of the meter wrapped around your life. It arrived in the form of the corregidor, the Spanish magistrate, flanked by 2 soldiers whose armor seemed to mock the simple adobe of your village. He was a man with a soft body and a hard voice. He unrolled a scroll and read the decree in a clipped, impatient Spanish. Fear was a cold blanket that fell over the village square. The curaca, your community leader, a man you respected, was forced to conduct the lottery. It was no lottery. It was a death sentence handed out with shaking hands. Your name was called. You remember the sharp intake of breath from your wife, Tika, the only sound in a sea of stunned silence. The preparation for the journey was a quiet flurry of grief and practicality. This is a cruel, almost forgotten detail of the Mita. You were expected to provision your own journey. For weeks, your family gathered what little you had. Tika prepared chuño, the freeze-dried potatoes that could last for months, and toasted. Sacks of corn and quinoa. You packed your warmest poncho and a spare set of sandals. It was a system of perfect exploitation, you realize now. The crown demanded your labor and forced you to pay for your own delivery to the site of your slow execution. By the time you left your village, your family was already poorer, already hungrier. The journey itself was a long, winding funeral procession. You and the other chosen men, the Mitayos, walked for 2 months across the harsh, beautiful landscape of the Andes. Your families came with you because to stay behind meant starvation. You see the faces of your children growing thinner on the road, their laughter replaced by a quiet watchfulness. You remember your wife packing a small woven doll into your satchel, a charm for luck. You still have it. That little doll, you think, has had a more demanding job than any of the great gods. Now, as your hand closes over the top rung of the ladder, and you haul yourself out of the mind's mouth, the flashback dissolves. You gasp, your lungs burning, as they take in the thin, frigid air of the Potosi twilight. The sky is a bruised purple, and the first stars are beginning to appear. You are back. But the understanding of how you got here is branded onto your soul. You are not a volunteer. You are not an employee. You are a mitayo. You are a cog in a vast, brutal machine invented by Viceroy Toledo, a machine designed to efficiently extract silver from a mountain and life from a people. You are bound by an unbreakable chain, forged in the royal courts of Spain and lubricated with the sweat and blood of thousands of men just like you. The year is long, and the mountain is always hungry. You look over the sprawling, chaotic city of Potosi below, a glittering testament to your bondage, and you gather what remains of your strength for the walk to the small, crowded hut you now call home. You are back in the rancheria, the sprawling slum of crude adobe huts where the indigenous workers are forced to live. The air is thick with the smoke of countless small fires, fueled by llama dung and whatever scraps of wood can be found. It's a smell of poverty and resilience. You huddle in your small, one-room dwelling with your family and a few other men from your village. In the corner, Mateo, the old miner from the amalgamation patio, is sharing a pouch of coca leaves. His trembling hands are still now, tucked under his poncho for warmth. In these quiet moments after the shift, stories are the only currency that matters. They are a balm for the soul, a brief escape from the crushing reality of your existence. Tonight, Mateo decides to tell the story of the beginning. It wasn't always called the Cerro Rico, he begins, his voice a low rasp. And it wasn't always a place of death. He tells you that the old ones, the ones who remembered, the stories from before the Spanish called it Sumac Urcu, the beautiful mountain. It was sacred. He says that the great Inca emperor Huayna Capac once passed this way. He saw the mountain shimmering with what he thought were signs of silver and ordered his men to mine it. But as they struck the first blow, a terrifying voice like thunder erupted from the sky itself, saying in Quechua, "Do not take the silver from this hill. It is destined for other masters." The Inca, wise and respectful of the gods, sealed the mines and left, never to return. A hush falls over the room. The idea that your suffering was divinely preordained is both terrifying and strangely comforting. The other masters, Mateo says with a grim smile, turned out to be impatient. And they found the mountain not through a god, but through a goat or a llama, depending on who tells the tale. He then begins the legend of Diego Hualpa, a name every miner knows. The year was 1545. This entire sprawling city of Potosi did not exist. There was nothing here but windswept plains, herds of vicuña, and the silent waiting mountain. Hualpa was a simple herder from a nearby village. He wasn't looking for riches or glory. He was just doing his job, which, on one particular day, involved chasing a runaway llama up the steep, unfamiliar slopes of the Sumac Urca. Of course, it was a llama. It seems that all great moments of discovery and disaster in these mountains somehow involve a stubborn camelid. Mateo leans forward, his eyes catching the firelight. "There are two versions of what happened next," he says, acknowledging the fuzziness of a story passed down through generations. This is how historians of the future will also find it, a truth wrapped in layers of legend. Some say that as the sun set, Hualpa grew tired. He slipped on a steep incline and grabbed a thick quinua bush to stop his fall. The bush, roots and all, was torn from the ground, and clinging to its roots was a giant gleaming chunk of raw, native silver. The mountain had revealed its heart to him. But the story I like better, Mateo continues, is the one with the fire. In this version, Hualpa, caught on the mountain by the approaching freezing night, decides to camp. He ties his troublesome llama to that same shrub and builds a small fire to keep from freezing to death. He drifts off to sleep under the brilliant stars of the Altiplano. The fire, fed by the dry wood and fanned by the high-altitude winds, burns hotter and longer than he intended. It bakes the very ground he sleeps upon. When he awakens in the morning, stiff with cold, he sees something extraordinary. The fire has melted the rock itself, and from the earth beneath the embers, small streams of molten silver have flowed like tears, now cooled into shimmering solid veins on the ground. He had found the greatest treasure on earth, and his first. Thought was probably not of empire or wealth, but simply good. Now I can finally afford a better rope for this animal. For a time, it was his secret. He would return to the mountain alone, chipping away small pieces of the pure silver. Back in his village, he was suddenly a little richer. He could trade for better food, a new poncho, a gift for his wife. He didn't build a palace, he just softened the sharp edges of his poverty. But wealth, no matter how small, is a heavy secret to carry. He eventually confided in a close friend, a man named Huanca. He showed him the mountain, the source of his luck. And Huanca, seeing not a shared secret but a personal opportunity, betrayed him. He went to the Spanish, to a man named Juan de Villarroel, and told him everything. And so, Mateo concludes with a sigh, the richest treasure of our people was given, away for the price of a single friendship. Looking back, it seems like a very bad trade. Villarroel registered the first official claim in April of 1545, and the world broke open. The secret was out. The news spread like a fever, and suddenly the quiet plains around the Sumakurku were flooded with ambitious, greedy men. The beautiful mountain was given its new, blunter name, the Rich Hill, and the frantic digging began. The city of Potosi erupted from the barren ground, a chaotic, violent, and instantly wealthy boom town. You look at the dying embers of the small dung fire in your hut. It gives off a meager, flickering warmth. You can't help but see in it the ghost of Diego Hualpa's fateful fire, a small flame that lit a fuse connected to the fate of continents, a fire that, for you and millions of your people, would burn everything to the ground. Your one day of rest is not for resting. It is for walking. It is for foraging, for trading a small, well-made clay pot your wife has crafted for a handful of wilted vegetables in the market. Today, this walk takes you from the dusty periphery of the rancherias into the heart of the beast itself, the imperial villa of Potosi. As you descend from the slopes where the workers live, the city unfolds below you, a sprawling, chaotic organism of red-tiled roofs and narrow, winding streets, all nestled in the shadow of the blood-red mountain. That is its reason for being. The sheer number of people is overwhelming. Some say there are 160,000 souls packed into this high-altitude bowl, a population to rival the great cities of Europe like London or Paris. Others, men who claim to be scholars, argue the number is smaller, perhaps only 120,000. From your vantage point, the debate is meaningless. It is a sea of humanity. More people than you could have imagined existed in the entire world, all scrabbling for a piece of the mountain's cursed treasure. As you enter the Spanish center of the city, the very ground changes beneath your feet. The dirt paths of your neighborhood give way to rough, uneven cobblestones that clatter with the sounds of iron-shod horses and the wheels of heavy carts. The buildings straighten up, growing taller and prouder. You pass the Church of San Lorenzo, its entrance a breathtaking explosion of carved stone. The style is a strange and beautiful hybrid, what they call mestizo baroque. You see angels with distinctly native faces, vines and fruits from your homeland intertwined with Spanish saints. It's as if your own culture has been conquered and then forced to decorate the walls of its prison. It is beautiful, and it makes your heart ache. This is the nature of Potosi's wealth. It is a wealth so vast it can afford to be beautiful. Every church, and there are dozens, seems to be in competition with the others to see which can be more lavish, which can have more gold leaf on its altar, which can hang a heavier, more resonant bell in its tower. And then you see it, the heart of the entire operation, a building that takes up an entire block. It is a fortress of stone with small barred windows and heavily armed guards at its gates. The Casa de la Moneda, the Royal Mint. You pause and watch as a train of llamas laden with heavy lumpy sacks is led inside. You know what is in those sacks. The silver you nearly died to help create, mixed into that toxic mud, is in there. Inside that great stone box, it will be melted, purified, and stamped into coins. They turn the soul of the mountain into little portable pieces, so its wealth can travel the world. It is the factory that produces the fuel for an empire you will never see. You know, from the talk of traders and soldiers, where it all goes. You have seen the mule trains, hundreds of them, being loaded under heavy guard for the long journey down to the coast. From there, great treasure fleets carry the silver to Panama, then across the ocean to Spain. This silver, these coins, stamped. With the face of a king you don't know, pays for everything. It funds armies fighting wars in places with impossible names like Flanders. It builds sprawling palaces in Madrid. It buys spices from distant islands and silks from the empire of China. The irony is staggering. The most luxurious dresses worn by the Spanish women who pass you on the street, holding scented cloths to their noses to block out the stench of the city, are made of silk that has traveled halfway around the world, paid for by a metal that has traveled the other half, all of it passing through this impossible city in the clouds. The wealth breeds a particular kind of madness. Potosi is famous not just for its riches, but for its violence and decadence. As you round a corner, you flatten yourself against a wall as two men in fine velvet doublets and plumed hats argue furiously in the middle of the street, their hands resting on the hilts of their gleaming swords. They are Basques, or perhaps Vicuñas, rival factions of Spaniards who are constantly at war with each other over mining claims, gambling debts, or simple matters of pride. You hurry past, not wanting to witness the inevitable conclusion. Bloodstains on these cobblestones are as common as spilled wine. The Spanish seem to have two main passions, you think, getting rich and finding very elaborate ways to kill each other over the proceeds. At least their priorities are straightforward. Later in the market, you hear two women gossiping about a party held by a silver baron the night before. They speak of a fountain that flowed with imported wine and of a feast where they ate oysters, brought all the way from the sea. They laugh about how the host's coat was so heavily embroidered with pearls that he could barely stand up straight. This world is so alien to you it might as well be on the moon. They are dining on pearls and wine while you bargain for a few shriveled potatoes. You are two different species, inhabiting the same city. You secure your meager provisions, wrap them tightly, and begin the long walk back up the hill. You turn your back on the glittering, violent city center, Potosi, the treasure of the world, the engine of the Spanish Empire. To you, it is just a beautiful, monstrous cage, whose bars are forged from pure silver. The walk back from the city leaves a bitter taste in your mouth, a residue of sights and sounds that do not belong to your world. You sit on a rough stone outside your hut, chewing your coca leaves, not for energy, but for the quiet numbness they bring. You watch the evening swallow the sky, the light retreating up the slopes of the Cerro Rico until only its peak glows a final bloody red. It is at this quiet moment that you hear it. Two Spanish merchants, their deal concluded, are shaking hands. Near the edge of the rancheria, one of them, a portly man with a booming voice, claps the other on the back and declares, "Excelente! A brilliant deal? Esto vale un potosí?" The phrase hangs in the thin, cold air. Vale un potosí. It's worth a potosí. You have heard this saying before. The soldiers use it, the merchants, the overseers. You've heard that it has traveled across the great ocean, that even in the court of the Spanish king, people use this phrase to describe something of immense, almost unimaginable value. It is the highest compliment one can pay to a treasure. They say the famous writer Cervantes even put it in his book about the mad knight who fights windmills. The whole world knows that to be worth a potosí is to be worth everything. The merchants walk away laughing. You are left to ponder the true cost of their little expression. You begin a silent accounting, a different kind of ledger from the ones kept in the Royal Mint. What is a potosí truly worth? The first entry in your ledger is a face, a young man named Keenan, from your own Ailu, who slipped from a chicken ladder 2 months ago. His wife's wail is a sound you can still hear in your sleep. The next entry is Mateo's trembling hands. Then the endless hacking cough of another miner, a sound so common it has become the background music of your life here. You try to calculate the cost in lives. You have heard the old men whisper a number, a terrible and unbelievable one, 8 million. They say that since the silver was discovered, 8 million of your people have been consumed by the mountain. Is it true? It feels true. You look at the mountain, dark and silent now, and you imagine it as a colossal tombstone with a single, unwritten number carved upon it. It's a popular phrase, you think to yourself. I suppose worth the lives of 8 million men is just too long and doesn't roll off the tongue quite as nicely during a business negotiation. Your mental accounting continues. What else is a potosí worth? It's worth the forests that have been clear-cut for miles in every direction to provide timber for the mine shafts and fuel for the smelting furnaces. It's worth the streams that run thick with mercury and arsenic where no fish can live. And it's worth the most absurd displays of wealth you have ever witnessed. Just last week you saw a procession leaving one of the grander churches. They were carrying a new statue of the Virgin Mary, and her robes were not cloth but solid beaten silver. Her crown was gold, yes, but the massive ornate pedestal she stood upon was pure silver. It took 20 sweating men to carry it. You've heard whispers of a silver baron who had the water pipes in his new mansion forged from the metal, not because it was practical, but simply because he could. The thought is so bizarre, it's almost funny. The same material you claw from the rock in suffocating darkness is used to carry their wastewater away. There is another, stranger cost that you can't quite grasp, but you feel it every day. With a mountain of pure silver being emptied next door, you would think money would be plentiful. In a way, it is. There are coins everywhere in the Spanish Quarter, yet the price of everything rises. The handful of corn you bought today cost twice what it did last year. The wool for a new. Poncho is impossibly expensive. It is a confusing, cruel paradox. The more silver they pull from the earth, the less that silver seems to be worth when it comes to buying a loaf of bread or a pair of sandals. The Spanish are very clever, you reflect. They managed to discover an infinite source of money and, in doing so, have somehow made it so that a handful of dried potatoes is still the most valuable thing a man like you can possibly own. You don't understand the economic theories that future historians will call the price revolution, but you understand the hunger in your belly. The phrase vale un potosi echoes in your mind one last time. You finally understand it. It signifies a value so great it has become an abstraction, a number so large it has lost all meaning. To the Spanish merchant, it is a convenient metaphor for profit. To you, it is a price tag for your soul. It is us, the collected value of every life cut short, every family broken, every forest felled, and every river poisoned. It is a wealth measured not in coins, but in ghosts. The last light fades from the sky, and the mountain is now just a hulking black shape against the stars. It looks sated for now. You pull your thin poncho tighter around your shoulders. The weight of what a Potosi is truly worth settling upon you like a shroud. It is another day, or perhaps the same one. In the timeless, suffocating dark of the mine, days blend into a single, continuous struggle for breath and survival. A distant clang of metal on metal signals the brief respite for a midday meal, the relentless hammering and chipping that forms the percussion of your life fades, replaced by a heavy, expectant silence. The other men slump against the rock walls, pulling out dried potatoes or corn from their pouches. But you have another duty to attend to first. You take your flickering tallow candle and move away from the main cavern, down a narrower, less traveled tunnel that smells of stale air and something else, something vaguely ceremonial. The tunnel opens into a small womb-like alcove, the rock ceiling low and stained black with generations of smoke. And there, seated on a throne of rock as if holding court, is the master of this domain. He is El Tio, the uncle. He is the true owner of the mountain, the lord of the underworld, the one whose permission you need to steal his treasure, and, more importantly, to leave his kingdom alive. The priests in the sunlit world above call him Satan, a figure of pure evil to be feared and renounced. But the priests don't work down here. Down here, the Christian God feels very far away, an absentee landlord in a distant heavenly palace. El Tio is the one on site. He's the one who decides if a loose rock stays in the ceiling or falls to crush you. He determines if the vein you strike will be rich with silver or barren stone. He is the only authority that truly matters. His statue is life-sized, sculpted from clay by the miners themselves, and painted in garish, startling colors. He has the powerful torso of a man, the legs of a goat, and a pair of wickedly curved horns. His eyes are jagged shards of glass that glitter hungrily in your candlelight, and his mouth is open in a wide, leering grin, revealing sharp, dog-like teeth. A prominent, erect phallus signifies his power over fertility, not of the fields, but of the rock itself, the masculine power to make the mountain yield its riches. This figure is the center of a long-standing academic debate. Is he a direct descendant of an ancient mountain god, an Apu? Is he the Inca underworld spirit, Supe? Or is he a more modern creation, a desperate fusion of the devil, the Spanish? Taught you to fear, and the earth spirits you have always known you must respect? To you, the question is irrelevant. He is simply the uncle, and you are in his house. The base of his throne is littered with the detritus of desperate prayers. There are mounds of masticated coca leaves, spilled libations of cheap cane liquor, aguardiente, that make the floor sticky, and countless cigarette butts offered up to the statue's grinning mouth. El Tio, it seems, has rather lowbrow tastes for a deity who owns a literal mountain of silver. You approach him not with the cowering fear the priests demand for their god, but with a cautious, pragmatic respect, like one might approach a notoriously grumpy and powerful village elder. You sit cross-legged on the floor before him, the flickering light casting your own dancing shadow on the wall behind you. This is another strange, forgotten part of the ritual. the conversation. You begin to speak to him in a low whisper, a mix of your native Quechua and the Spanish you've been forced to learn. You don't recite formal prayers, you talk to him. You complain about the ache in your back. You tell him about the poor quality of the ore in your current shaft. You ask him to keep the roof from falling on your head for the rest of the day. It feels like a perfectly reasonable request, a simple matter of workplace safety that he, as the landlord, should really be on top of. You look into his glittering glass eyes and think about the priest's sermons. The priest claims El Tío wants to drag your soul to hell for all eternity. You almost let out a dark chuckle at the thought. You are already deep inside the earth, breathing poison, surrounded by heat and suffering, working for a pittance in a system designed to kill you. Being dragged to hell, you suspect, would feel like a lateral move at best. The Christian devil punishes sinners. El Tío, if properly appeased, offers protection. He is a bargainer, a pragmatist. He is a god for a desperate world where safety is more valuable than salvation. He is not good, but he is present. After a few minutes of this one-sided conversation, you feel the familiar, meager comfort that it brings. You have paid your respects. You have acknowledged the true power in this subterranean world. You have looked the Lord of the Mine in the eye and stated your case. Now, all that is left is to give him his due, to pay your tribute not to the Spanish king, but to the king beneath the mountain. You reach into your pouch for the offerings you have brought for him. Your small act of faith is complete for now. You give the statue one last nod and turn to leave the alcove. The image of his grotesque, knowing smile seared into the back of your mind as you walk back to the endless, back-breaking work. Having concluded your one-sided business meeting with the mountain's true owner, it is time to pay for his services. This is not worship, not in the way the priests with their incense and Latin chants would understand it. This is a transaction. It is a contract negotiation with the ultimate foreman. You reach into the small woven pouch at your waist, the one that holds your worldly possessions, your coca, a small flask of liquor, and a couple of crudely rolled cigarettes. These are the tools of your spiritual trade, the tribute required to operate in this dark kingdom. First, the coca. You take a generous pinch of the dried green leaves, selecting the most whole and fragrant ones. This is not the leftover dust you chew mindlessly during the long hours of labor. This is the good stuff reserved for a being of status. You place the leaves in your mouth and begin to chew, your cheek bulging with the familiar wad. The plant's bitter sacred juice begins to work its magic, sharpening the edges of the world. After a few moments, you lean forward and carefully, respectfully, take the masticated pulp, the acolico, from your mouth and press it onto the rock at the base of the statue's feet. You are feeding him, sustaining him, sharing the life-giving energy of the sacred leaf. It is an intimate gesture, a sign of respect and communion. Next comes the spirit. You pull out a small, flat bottle of aguardiente, a harsh, fiery liquor distilled from sugarcane that is cheap enough for a miner to afford. Unscrewing the top, your first act is to tip the bottle and let a small stream of the clear liquid splash onto the dusty floor of the alcove. This is for Pachamama, for Mother Earth. You may be in the masculine underworld of El Tío, but it is within her body that this whole drama unfolds. It's wise to keep her happy, too. Then you raise the bottle to the statue's leering, open mouth and carefully pour a generous glug over his clay lips, letting it dribble down his chin and chest. You watch the dark stain spread across the painted clay. Finally, you raise the bottle to your own lips and take a swig. It burns a raw path down your throat and explodes as heat in your stomach. It's terrible stuff, but it feels deeply rude to offer your host a drink you aren't willing to share, especially when he's the sort of host who can drop the ceiling on you if he feels slighted. The final, and perhaps most important offering, is the cigarette. Tobacco is a powerful tool for communication with the spirits. You take one of your hand-rolled cigarettes, place it between the statue's teeth, and lean in with your own candle, its flame dancing in the still, hot air. You touch the flame to the tip of the cigarette until it catches, glowing a fierce orange in the gloom. Then you lean back and watch. This is more than just an offering. It is a form of divination, a way to gauge the uncle's mood. You watch. The smoke curl up from his mouth, a ghostly exhalation that rises and dissipates into the darkness. You watch the cherry burn. If it burns quickly and steadily, it means El Tío is pleased. The path ahead is clear, for now. If it sputters and dies, a knot of dread would tighten in your stomach. It would mean your offering was not accepted. Today, it burns with a steady, reassuring glow. You feel a small wave of relief wash over you. The pact is sealed. You sit there for a moment watching the uncle smoke, and you wonder about the ritual itself. Is it anything more than a silly superstition, a game you play to keep the terror at bay? Does this act truly have any power over the groaning rock and poisonous gases? This is the heart of a debate you can't articulate, but feel in your bones. Is this just a coping mechanism, or is it a source of genuine power? The Spanish have taken your land, your freedom, and are actively taking your life. They control everything about you in the world above. But down here, in this smoky little niche, you have agency. You have a relationship with the true power of this place that they can't understand or control. The priests above offer you salvation in the next life. El Tío offers a slightly better than average chance of making it to your next shift. In your current position, you have to admit you're more invested in the short-term, practical offer. The cigarette has burned down to a scorched nub. Its faint wisp of smoke a final signature on your contract. The transaction is complete. You have given the uncle his due, coca for his hunger, alcohol for his thirst, and tobacco for his pleasure. In return, you have asked for the simple, priceless gift of continued existence. With a final respectful nod to the grotesque, grinning Lord of the Deep, you push yourself to your feet. The brief, fragile calm the ritual provides settles over you like a thin blanket as you turn your back on the shrine and walk back towards the clamor of work, leaving the uncle to enjoy his offerings in the profound and lonely silence of his kingdom. You return to your designated spot at the rock face, the brief ritual in the alcove already feeling like a distant memory. The fragile sense of calm it provided is a thin shield against the oppressive reality of the work. You pick up your heavy iron bar, its familiar weight a grim comfort. As you begin the rhythmic, monotonous work of chipping away at a new vein, your mind drifts from the physical strain to the spiritual calculus that governs your life. The act of worship you just performed was a necessary treason, a pact with a power you are forbidden to acknowledge. On Sunday, in the blinding light of the world above, you will be herded with all the other workers into the courtyard of a massive church. A priest with a stern face will speak of one God, a benevolent and all-powerful Father in a place called heaven. He will speak of Jesus Christ, his Son, and of the Virgin Mary, a mother of endless mercy. And you believe in them. Of course you do. They are the gods of the sun, the rain, the harvest, and the family. They belong to the world of the living, the world of light. You cross yourself when you speak of them. But their power, their jurisdiction, seems to stop abruptly at the up mouth of the mine. You wouldn't ask a farmer for advice on catching fish in the sea, so why would you bother a sky god with the problems of the underworld? Down here, you pray to the local specialist. The priests call El Tío the devil, the great enemy of God. They preach that he is a liar and a tempter who wants only to drag your soul to eternal damnation. But that has never felt quite right. It doesn't feel like a great war between good and evil. It feels more like a territorial agreement, a division of labor. God can have everything above ground. El Tío is the undisputed ruler of everything below. It's a practical arrangement. You see it as a cosmic version of the Spanish government. God is the king in far-off Spain, an ultimate but remote power. El Tío is the local viceroy, the man on the ground whose rules you must follow every day if you want to avoid being flogged or imprisoned. The priest warns that any dealings with El Tío will put a stain on your immortal soul. You look at your hands, calloused, scarred, and permanently ingrained with the dust of the mine, and you think that a little extra stain on your soul is truly the least of your worries. This careful navigation of two worlds is the key to survival. You see it everywhere. You see men make the sign of the cross before stepping onto the first rung of the ladder, only to toss a wad of coca at the first shrine. To the uncle they pass on the way down. It's a spiritual balancing act, covering all your bases. In the gloom, your candlelight faintly illuminates a small, crudely carved wooden cross that has been wedged into a fissure in the rock wall. It's not an act of defiance against El Tío. It's the opposite. It's a gesture of hope, a plea for cooperation. It's as if the miner who placed it there was trying to formally introduce the two powers, asking them to come to a working arrangement for the sake of the poor man caught in the middle. It's a lot of spiritual paperwork, you muse, keeping track of which deity gets which offering on which day. But as you work, a more troubling thought worms its way into your mind. Is this balancing act a clever form of resistance, or is it the ultimate form of submission? Are you preserving the old ways, the worship of the mountain Apis of your ancestors, by giving the spirit a new name and hiding him in the dark where the priests cannot see? Or have you fallen for the conqueror's greatest trick? Have you so thoroughly accepted their worldview that you now actively worship the very figure they identify as their ultimate evil? The question makes your head spin. By making bargains with the devil of your oppressors, are you secretly winning, or have you already lost in the most profound way possible? The conquest of your land was so absolute, it seems, that it has even conquered your gods, twisting them into new, more monstrous shapes. A chunk of rock breaks free under your bar and thuds to the ground. The sound snaps you back to the present. The philosophical questions are for men with full bellies and soft hands. For you, the answer is simpler, found in the immediate physical reality of your situation. You do what is necessary. You do what works. This devil's bargain, this pact made in the bowels of the earth, is not about salvation in the next life. It is about drawing the next breath in this one. It is a choice between a distant promise of heaven and a tangible, immediate protection from the hell you are already in. Each strike of your iron bar against the rock is an affirmation of your choice. Tink. You honor the god of the sun. Tink. You appease the lord of the rock. Tink. You do what you must to survive. It is the only theology that makes sense in a place where grace is measured by the ton and paid for in blood. The signal comes, a long, mournful sound from a horn that echoes through the tunnels. The shift is over. A collective, silent sigh of relief passes through the exhausted men. The long, arduous climb to the surface begins a reverse pilgrimage, from the underworld back to the living. When you finally emerge from the mouth of the mine, the evening sky is a canvas of deep violet and fading orange. The air is so cold and clean it feels like a physical blow, scouring the dust from your lungs. For a moment, your eyes, accustomed to the absolute dark, ache from the beauty of the dying light. You stand there, a creature of the deep earth, blinking. In a world you feel you no longer belong to, you join the river of silent men flowing down the mountain slope, a shuffling gray tide of humanity. Your path home leads directly through the heart of Potosi, a journey across a border more real than any line on a map. This is the city's great unspoken rule, the stark segregation of its people. You leave the dusty, chaotic slopes of the rancherias, the designated indigenous quarters, and descend into the ordered stone-paved grid of the Spanish villa. It is like walking from one country into another. The air itself seems to change. The smell of dung fires and sweat is replaced by something else, something rich and tantalizing. It's the smell of roasting meat seasoned with spices you can't name, a scent so intoxicating it makes your empty stomach twist into a tight knot. It is probably the most substantial meal you will have all week, and you are only breathing. Hidden, the houses here are not the simple adobe huts of your world. They are two-story stone palaces, their heavy wooden doors studded with iron. You look up at the ornate enclosed balconies, intricately carved from dark wood, where the wealthy can look down on the street without having to mingle with it. Through a window glazed with real, impossibly expensive glass, you see a room bathed in the warm, golden glow of a dozen wax candles. In your hut, a single tallow candle is a treasure to be used sparingly. In that room, light is squandered with an ease that baffles you. You hear the faint, delicate notes of a clavichord being played, a sound as alien and elegant as the smell of the food. Laughter, light and carefree, spills from another open window. These are the sounds of a world that has never known a moment of real hunger or fear. You and your fellow miners are ghosts in this landscape. The richly dressed Spaniards who pass you by look through you, their eyes sliding over your filthy, ragged form as if you were part of the scenery, a natural feature of the evening gloom. There is no malice in their gaze, but something worse, a complete and utter lack of recognition that you are even human. You are simply the machinery of their wealth, momentarily visible as you pass between the mine and your dwelling. Historians of a future time may debate the possibility of social mobility in this colonial society, wondering if a man of your station could ever cross the divide. From where you stand, the question is laughable. The wall between your world and theirs is as high and as solid as the Andes themselves. A carriage drawn by two fine horses clatters to a halt in front of the grandest mansion on the street. A servant rushes to open the door, and a Spanish lady begins her careful descent. Your eyes are drawn to her feet. She is wearing chapines, the absurdly tall platform shoes that are the height of fashion. They are made of cork and covered in rich velvet, lifting her a full foot off the cobblestones. She teeters precariously, leaning heavily on her servant's arm to keep her balance. The shoes are a symbol of a life of such profound leisure that she does not require the ability to walk unassisted. It is a sign of ultimate status to be so, beautifully helpless. In your world, if you cannot walk, you perish. The contrast is so stark, it's almost a form of poetry. You avert your eyes and keep shuffling forward, part of the silent, exhausted procession. The palaces of the Silver Barons, with their music and their warm candlelight, stand as monuments on either side of you. They are beautiful, solid, and permanent. You know, with a certainty that settles deep in your bones, what they are truly made of. They are built of stone and timber, yes, but they are mortared together with the lives of men like you. Their foundations are packed with the dust from your lungs. Their riches are the product of your terror in the dark. Each note of that clavichord, each laugh, each bite of roasted meat is paid for by a moment of your suffering. Finally, you cross the invisible line. The cobblestones give way to dirt. The grand houses shrink back into humble huts. The smells of rich cooking are replaced by the familiar scent of smoke and poverty. The music is gone, replaced by the sound of coughing and the quiet murmurs of your own people. You have completed your daily commute between hell and its opulent waiting room. You have walked through the feast you were not invited to, a ghost at the banquet. And now you are home. The journey through their world has left you feeling more hollow and weary than the long hours of labor itself. You are back in the relative quiet of your hut. The day's labor has settled deep into your joints, a familiar, grinding ache. In your hands, you hold a small clay bowl filled with your evening meal, a thin, watery soup made from chuño, the freeze-dried potatoes that are the staple of your existence. It is gritty and tastes vaguely of earth and despair. As you are about to take your first spoonful, your neighbor, a man named Kusi, who sometimes works as a porter in the city, ducks through the low doorway, his eyes wide with the story he is bursting to tell. He has overheard the servants of Don Gonzalo, one of the richest silver barons in Potosi, gossiping about a banquet held the night before. As Kusi begins to speak, you close your eyes, the gritty potato soup forgotten in your hands. His words become a paintbrush, and your weary mind becomes the canvas. You are no longer in your dark, smoky hut. You are a phantom, a ghost slipping through the walls of Don Gonzalo's palace. The first thing you see is the entrance. Kusi swears, it is true. For the arrival of the Viceroy's personal envoy, Don Gonzalo had his servants pave the path from the street to his front door with solid silver ingots, fresh from the refinery. The guests, in their fine silks and velvets, walked upon a carpet of pure silver, the raw, heavy metal that you and hundreds of others had clawed from the mountain just days before. You try to imagine the feeling of that under your worn sandals. Kusi wonders aloud if it was slippery. Now you are inside the great hall. The air is warm and heavy with the scent of beeswax and roasting meat. 100 candles burn in massive silver candelabras, casting a brilliant theatrical light over a scene of impossible opulence. A long table, carved from a single slab of dark wood, is draped in fine linen imported from Flanders. Each place is set with delicate porcelain from China, silver cutlery, and goblets of Venetian glass. The silver barons of Potosi were famous for this kind of competitive extravagance, a constant battle to outdo one another in a spectacle of conspicuous consumption. Then comes the food. In your mind, you see platters piled high with things you have only heard of in stories. There is a whole roasted pig, its skin glistening. There are fish brought from the distant sea, packed in ice, that was harvested from the highest mountain peaks by other indigenous men. There are bowls of olives from Spain, wheels of cheese, and bread made from white wheat flour, not the coarse cornmeal you are used to. For dessert, there are towers of candied fruits and pastries dusted with sugar, a luxury more valuable than gold. And the wine, a dark red river, flows endlessly, poured from silver pitchers into the delicate glasses. A single plate of their food, you imagine, costs more than the official value of a miner's life. You drift closer to the table, an invisible spectator. The men are laughing, their faces flushed with wine. They are not discussing philosophy or art. They are talking business. One complains about the rising price of mercury from Huancavelica. Another boasts about a new rich vein his team has just struck. Then you hear Don Gonzalo himself, his voice booming. He complains that his metayos are growing lazy, that their quota of ore has been down for the week. He jokes that perhaps a few more lashes from the overseer would improve their motivation. The other men laugh in agreement. The sound is a physical blow, even in your imagination. It is a chilling, casual cruelty. It is oddly comforting to know that even as they feast and drink from silver cups, they are thinking of you. It shows they truly care. Kusi, the storyteller, pauses and shakes his head. Why would a man pave his walkway with silver, he wonders. Is he mad? Is he so rich that money means nothing? It's a question future historians will debate. Was this shocking waste a symptom of deep-seated insecurity, a need to constantly prove one's dominance in a violent, unstable society? Or was it a cold, calculated political move, a way to intimidate rivals and curry favor with the powerful? You have a simpler answer. They do it because they can. Their wealth is so immense, so disconnected from the labor that creates it, that it has become an abstraction, a game. They play with silver ingots the way a child plays with stones. The story ends. Kusi, having unburdened himself, bids you good night and disappears into the darkness. You are left alone, your soup now cold in your hands. The phantom feast dissolves, but its ghost remains, a bitter aftertaste in your mouth. You look at the gritty gray liquid in your bowl, and then you think of the river of red wine. The wine they drank tonight was purchased with the silver you hauled out of the earth this very morning. The bread they ate was paid for by the terror you felt when the tunnel creaked. The laughter they shared was financed by the silence of the men who did not survive the week. You are not just a spectator to their wealth. You are the primary ingredient. You are the invisible, uncredited appetizer at their endless, glittering feast. You finally take a spoonful of the cold soup. It tastes like dust. The story of the phantom feast fades into the cold night air, leaving only a lingering chill. You sit on the hard-packed earth outside your hut, a solitary silhouette against the deepening twilight. Your gaze is fixed on the mountain, the ever-present, accomplice to your fate. The sun has dipped below the horizon, but its last defiant rays are thrown against the sky, painting the underside of the clouds a bruised purple and bathing the peak of the Cerro Rico in a spectacular, bloody crimson. It looks as if the mountain itself is bleeding out, or perhaps it is blushing at the sheer scale of the riches and sorrow it contains. You look at its familiar shape, the iconic cone that has dominated this landscape for eternity. Yet, you know, it is not the same mountain your ancestors knew. The old men say it used to be taller, prouder. Now, after nearly a century of relentless excavation, it seems weary, diminished. You can almost feel its hollowness, the intricate web of tunnels and shafts that have turned it into a fragile, honeycomb shell. It is a mountain being eaten from the inside out, its strength and substance shipped across the sea in the form of coins. They have taken so much silver, you muse with a dark irony, that one day they will have taken the entire mountain, and all they will have left is a very large hole. You are certain they will find a way to sell the whole too. Your gaze drifts from the peak to the silent huts of the rancheria scattered around you. In the doorways and shadows, you see other men just like you. They sit in the same posture of bone-deep exhaustion, their faces turned towards the mountain in a silent collective vigil. You do not know all their names. They come from different villages, speak different dialects of Quechua or Aymara, and worship different local spirits. But here in Potosi, the Mita has forged you into a new kind of tribe. You are the men of the mountain. You are a silent brotherhood, bonded together by lung dust, by fear, and by a shared profound dislike for the sound of an overseer's voice. This unspoken communion, this shared understanding in the twilight, is a form of wealth the Spanish will never be able to mine. As the last red light drains from the mountain, leaving it a black, menacing shape against the starry sky, your mind turns to the great unanswerable question of it all. You know, in a way that the feasting barons never could, that this single mountain is changing the whole world. The silver that flows from its veins is the lifeblood of the Spanish Empire. It is a strange and dizzying thought that a coin a man uses to buy bread in a place called Seville was, just a year ago, the very piece of rock you were praying would not fall from the ceiling and crush you. Historians in the future will call this the birth of a global economy, a story of progress and connection. But from where you sit, it is a much simpler story. It is a story of taking. They are building their new world on the ruins of yours. You have survived another day. This is the only victory that matters. The sun will rise tomorrow, and you will make the long, chilling descent once more. You will chew your coca. You will say your prayer to the scowling uncle in the dark, and you will swing your iron bar. You will do it because your wife Tika is inside the hut, and your children are sleeping. Their presence, their survival, is the only treasure you truly possess. The silver barons can have their mountains of coin and their palaces with silver pipes. You have this, a quiet moment at the end of a terrible day and the warmth of a hand on your shoulder. Tika has come out of the hut, her face a gentle silhouette in the gloom. She says nothing, but you understand. It is time to come inside, away from the mountain's cold gaze. You rise, your joints cracking in protest, and turn. Your back on the Cerro Rico, leaving the ghosts and the grandeur to the night. And so Koya's day comes to its quiet, weary close. He turns from the vast, cold mountain and finds his small comfort in the warmth of his hut, in the presence of his family. His story, a single thread in a tapestry of immense history and sorrow, fades into the soft darkness. And now, your own journey for tonight can find its gentle end. The thin, frigid air of the Andes melts away, replaced by the soft, comforting weight of your blanket. The sounds of Potosi, the distant clanging, the murmured stories, the phantom laughter from a baron's feast, all recede, leaving only the familiar, soothing hum of your own quiet room. Let go of the heavy iron bar and the gritty potato soup. Release the image of the glittering, greedy mountain. You are no longer on a precarious ladder descending into the dark, nor are you walking as a ghost through a city of opulent palaces. You are here, perfectly safe, perfectly still. Feel the tension leave your shoulders, your arms, your hands. Allow your breathing to slow, to deepen, to find a natural, easy rhythm, like the gentle ebb and flow of a quiet tide. You have witnessed a story of immense hardship, but that story is now over. You are left with only peace, only stillness. Imagine a different kind of dawn, not the harsh, cold dawn of the high altiplano, but a soft, warm sunrise. Picture its gentle, golden light spilling over a quiet, peaceful valley, a place with no minds, no overseers, no fear, a place of deep, restorative rest. This is the place your mind can drift to now, a landscape of pure tranquility. Let the last remnants of the story dissolve like sugar in warm water, leaving nothing behind but a feeling of profound calm. You have listened, you have learned, and now it is time for the deepest, most well-deserved sleep. Your mind is quiet, your body is heavy and relaxed. There is nothing left to do but to let go and drift away on a soft, silent current into a world of peaceful dreams. You've reached the end of another cozy nappy tale. Sleep well, and remember, you're always welcome here. Sweet dreams, nappy friend.